Welcome, everyone. Today we have a truly inspiring guest, Richard O'Keefe, a renowned parenting educator and author whose mission is to help parents break generational cycles of trauma and raise kids who thrive. With decades of experience teaching parenting education in communities and prisons, Richard has unique insights into what leads young people down dark paths like addiction, violence, and crime. And more importantly, how parents can guide their children toward happier, healthier futures. Richard recently published a powerful book, 911 What's Your Parenting Emergency, that dives into these pressing issues. In this conversation, we'll explore the lessons he's learned working with incarcerated men, the biggest parenting mistakes to avoid, and practical ways to strengthen the bond with your kids while keeping them safe from negative influences. This is an episode every parent needs to hear, so let's dive in. Hi, Richard. Welcome.
Billy, thank you for having me on. I'm always grateful for an opportunity to share my message.
I would like to start with what inspired your journey into parenting education and how did that path lead you to working in prisons?
Well, I have 6 children, 23 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. So when I was a young parent a few years ago, I was clueless. You could say that I really didn't know much about being a parent, and my kids would whine and tease and fight and throw tantrums and ignore me when I asked them to do something. They would tell me no. They would backtalk and be defiant. I was overwhelmed and stressed out. Later, I found out that they were just normal kids being raised by a clueless dad. I tried to control their behavior by doing what typical parents do, screaming, punishing, lecturing, bribing, and threatening. And it was exhausting work. The result was only temporary. And so I finally came to the realization that I had better make a serious change in my life, or both myself and my kids were in serious trouble. So I started reading parenting books. And the first thing I learned was how many parenting books there are. They seem endless. And I thought to myself, if all these parenting books teach the same thing, then why so many? And if they all teach something different, then how many of these parenting books am I going to have to read to learn all the parenting skills that I need? I kept looking for that one parenting book that was easy to read and easy to understand with step-by-step instructions to all the parenting skills that I needed, and I never found it. Later on, I went on to write that book, but we'll talk about that later. In 2016, I started teaching parenting classes in the community and in the justice system, which means the county jails and the state prison. Today, I teach 6 classes a week at the state prison and the county jail. Just a little bit of a point of interest here is when I go to the prison to teach classes, I go through 12 locked gates controlled by the prison staff to get to my classroom. My students are all from different walks of life, from those receiving master's degrees and becoming vice presidents and CEOs of companies, to those not finishing high school and spending most of their lives homeless or incarcerated and everywhere in between. One thing they have in common is that they want to be good dads. Well, over the course of 12 two-hour sessions, I get to know these guys, especially what kind of life they had growing up. We do a little exercise where I draw on the board a stick figure. And then at the top of the stick figure, I put experiences. Under the experiences, I put feelings. And under feelings, I put behavior. I say we've all had a whole lifetime of experiences, and those experiences have led to our feelings and beliefs. And those feelings and beliefs have driven our behavior. So I tell my students, I want to ask you 13 questions, and I want you to raise your hand if you can say yes to this question, and then keep track of how many times that you've raised your hand. Here's the questions that I ask them. I say, before you turned 18, how many of you experienced, number 1, emotional abuse? In other words, constantly being yelled at or criticized or threatened? Hands go up. Physical abuse? Hands go up. How many of you have experienced sexual abuse? How about neglect? In other words, being left alone, feeling like no one cares about me, feeling abandoned? Hands go up. How about seeing your mother treated violently? watching a sibling being abused, watching violence outside the home, having a family member who is depressed, hands go up, having a family member who is addicted to drugs or alcohol. Number 10, having a family member in prison, hands go up. Having a family member have to leave due to separation, divorce, or deportation, hands go up. Being in foster care, more hands. And then the last one I ask is, how many of you, before you turned 18, have lived in a war zone? And I actually have hands go up about that too. I say that all these experiences that you've had, that you raised your hands to, are called trauma. And all these traumatic experiences, they result in feelings. So give me a list of some of the feelings that these traumatic experiences give you. Here's the list that they give me: feeling abandoned and unloved, feeling worthless, anger, hate, guilt, sadness, loneliness, depression, regret, and fear. And so all these feelings have been bottled up and suppressed during their young lives. And then I ask them, now this is really revealing. I say, what sort of behaviors do these feelings drive? Oh, by the way, I ask them, how many of you raised your hands 4 or more times? Hands go up. 5 or more times. 6 or more times. 7, 8, 9, 10, and there's still hands in the air. 11, 12. When I get to 13, there may be one hand in the air. These guys have experienced so much trauma in their young lives, it has really affected their behavior. And here's some of the behaviors that they tell me about: drug and alcohol addiction, casual sex, uncontrolled anger, acts of defiance, crime, gang involvement, fighting, depression, pornography, gun violence, domestic violence, failed marriages, child abuse, thoughts of suicide. No wonder these guys are in prison. Here's the bottom line. Most of my students lived young lives filled with trauma, having experienced physical and emotional abuse. Many were severely beaten for bad behavior. Some ran away from home. Others were kicked out of the house. Most never felt loved. Some sold drugs. Most of them were drug addicts. Many witnessed violence outside the home. Many of them joined gangs. Most did not have a good role model from which to learn parenting skills. Many turned to drugs, crime, sex to escape their emotional pain that they felt growing up. Emotional pain caused by, Billy, the people who raised them. Now, when I look at an inmate, someone who's been charged with a crime or convicted of a crime, I don't ask myself, what's wrong with you? Rather, I look at that person and ask myself, what happened to you? What happened to put you on that dark path? What happened that caused you to behave that way? And it's given me a whole new mindset. It has changed the way I see them, the way I interact with them, and the way I teach them. And it all comes down to this. Working with these incarcerated men made me come to realize that there are children today on those same dark paths. And if something isn't done to redirect them, they will eventually end up where those paths lead. So back to your original question, what inspired me to write this book and to take my message out to the world is because I believe that there are children on those dark paths leading to drug and alcohol addiction, unplanned teenage pregnancies, crime and incarceration, gang involvement, gun violence, domestic violence, even thoughts of suicide. And if something isn't done, these children are going to end up in jail like some of these other guys. Here's the thing. I believe that these tragedies don't have to happen. I believe that they can be prevented or at least reduced in families where parents know what to do. So I wrote this book, 911, What is Your Parenting Emergency, to show parents what to do. From this book, they'll learn how to reduce their struggling and enjoy the parenting journey. That's a long answer to your question.
I love it. I love the answer. And I would love to give parents some actionable tips, like what not to do and what to do, because we
Mhm.
all care for our kids and unknowingly we cause some of this trauma.
Yeah.
So, any practical advice? And of course, they'll buy the book, but right now? What can they do tomorrow? Just,
Thank you for asking. This is the message that I want to spread throughout the world. Everything I teach and everything in my book centers around 5 words that I believe are the most powerful 5 words that a parent can live by. Here's those 5 words. Meet the 4 emotional needs. You see, all children have 4 emotional needs that must be met. And when these needs are met, good things happen. Parents will strengthen the relationships that they have with their children. They will see an increase in cooperation. They will build a strong family where their children learn and practice good values. And when they meet these 4 emotional needs, they will increase the odds that their children will make good choices even when parents are not around. These are 4 things that happen when parents meet these 4 emotional needs. However, now pay close attention to this. When parents do not meet these needs, that's when struggling happens. That's when children's behavior worsens. That's when parents get overwhelmed and stressed out. I want you to know what these 4 emotional needs are. So I'm going to tell you how to meet these 4 emotional needs in a minute. But right now, the 4 emotional needs and the thing that I want all parents to know is this. The first emotional need that all children have is a sense of belonging. That means to feel included, important, to receive personal attention. All kids need to feel that they matter, and they're looking for that. And if we don't meet this need to feel a sense of belonging, kids discover that they can meet this need on their own by misbehaving, because then they get angry attention from their parents, and they learn that angry attention is better than no attention at all. That's how strong this need to feel a sense of belonging is. So that's the first need. The second need that all children have is a sense of personal power. That means they need to feel independent, significant, able to make choices, freedom to experiment and explore. If we do not meet this need in positive ways, they'll soon discover that they can meet it themselves by saying no to a request or not obeying or complying with a rule that we have around the house. So, number 2, sense of personal power. Number 3 is also very powerful. The need to feel heard and understood. That means to have someone in a child's life that will listen to them. If kids are denied the opportunity to express their feelings, then their need to be heard and understood goes unmet. When that happens, children must suppress or bottle up those hurt feelings. And over time, they can have a negative effect on their emotional health and their behavior. So that's number 3, to be heard and understood. And then number 4, all children need boundaries in their
mm,
lives. So we meet this need by teaching and correcting. We teach values, we teach expectations, rules, we teach the behavior that we want to see. We make requests. When we make requests, we set boundaries. And then when children push those boundaries, and all children do because they have this need for a sense of personal power, they push those boundaries, they see what they can get away with, then we need to correct their behavior. And there's definitely some things that we can talk about how to correct their behavior. But the thing that I want all parents to know is that there are these 4 emotional needs that children have: need for a sense of belonging, sense of personal power, to be heard and understood, and boundaries. I ask my incarcerated students, do you think there are people living in this jail or in this prison who, as young kids, did not have their 4 emotional needs met? All hands go up. And then I ask, do gangs meet these 4 emotional needs? What do you think they say?
yeah, they do.
Absolutely. Sense of belonging? Yes. Sense of personal power? Uh-huh. To be heard and understood? Yep. Do gangs have rules? Yes, they do. So if parents do not meet these emotional needs, then they will be receptive to an invitation to join a gang. And
Yeah.
that's,
Recently, I read a book, Gabor Mate, and it goes about attachment and how kids today are much more attached to their peers than their parents. And
yeah,
I'm wondering if parents already feel they have lost influence. How do they course correct, in your opinion?
sure. Well, the answer to that is what we just discussed. Meet the 4 emotional needs. People come up to me and they'll say, I know that you teach these parenting classes. I have a child who is just bouncing off the wall. He doesn't do what I say. He's very uncooperative. Give me a consequence or a punishment that will make him understand that I'm the boss and he better do what I say. So I say, how are you meeting his sense of belonging? Are you spending one-on-one time with him? We're going to be talking about that. One-on time is the most important thing that we can do to increase that sense of belonging and strengthen our relationships with our kids. Most of the time they'll say, no, I do not spend time with my kids. I say, you don't have a discipline problem. What you have is a relationship problem. Now, here's something very interesting. And what I love about these four emotional needs is that when it comes to setting boundaries, we want to teach our children and we want to correct our children. Those are the two parts of boundaries, teaching and correcting. However, if we do not have a good relationship with our children, our kids will not care about what we teach them. They won't be receptive to our teachings. And trying to get them to live the rules and do what we say is going to be really challenging. If we do have a good relationship with our kids, then they'll be receptive to the teachings that we have, and they'll be responsive when we try to correct their behavior. So the way that we increase or strengthen that relationship we have with our children is to meet the first three emotional needs: sense of belonging, sense of personal power, to be heard and understood. When we meet those needs, relationships grow. We develop a strong connection and respect for each other. And when that happens, it's easy to teach our kids, and correcting them
It's
is
not through
it's
punishment,
hardly
though.
an issue. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And here's something else to consider. When we meet those four emotional needs, we no longer have to concern ourselves with screaming or punishing or lecturing or bribing or threatening. The need to control our children goes away naturally and automatically. Isn't that interesting? So the thing that I want to get out to the world is meet those four emotional needs. Imagine if every family had this philosophy to meet their children's four emotional needs. How would that change families? How would that change communities? How would that change the world? Wow,
I,
huh?
yeah, I would love to live in that world.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing is that the way we were raised has influenced our way of parenting. So we struggle. We know we don't want to yell at our kids, but we still struggle with a reactive behavior in those
Mm-hmm.
heightened emotional moments. No doubt there are families that want to parent this way and yet have trouble doing that.
Yeah. Well, when I was a young parent, I didn't know any other way. So I did a lot of screaming, yelling, threatening, punishing because I wanted to control my children's behavior. We can't control their behavior. We can't control other people. All we can control is what we do, but we can have a tremendous influence on our children. In fact, as parents, we're obligated to have that influence. And when we meet the four emotional needs, that's the key, Billy. Meet
Yeah.
those four emotional needs, and it changes the whole dynamics of our family. It took me a long time to realize this. I wish I could go back in time and re-raise my children. I would do things a lot differently. My kids turned out okay. I did some things that were good, but I just want everybody to realize that there is a better way. If parents are meeting those four emotional needs now, they are receiving the blessings that those four emotional needs give them. Otherwise, they can start to meet those four emotional needs, and then their families will become much more fun. The children will develop physically and mentally more healthy.
It's never too late, right? For parents who
It's never
already
too late to
have
start. Yeah,
teenagers,
yeah.
they still can strengthen that bond.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, you were talking about parenting books and that you couldn't find one that answered your questions. But let's tell people about your book and what you're covering in it.
Thank you. My book teaches 15 skills to help parents meet those four emotional needs. I'd like to go through a couple of those skills with
I would
you,
love to.
if that's
Yeah.
okay. All right. And I'm sure your listening audience will appreciate this. Okay. So to meet the need for a sense of belonging, there are 4 parenting skills. Spend one-on-one time with your kids, spend family time together, get to know your children, and make positive deposits. To meet the need for a sense of personal power, there are 3 parenting skills. Give choices, teach life skills, set goals with your children. To meet the need to be heard and understood, there's just one skill, and that's called acknowledge negative feelings. To meet the need for boundaries, there are 7 parenting skills. Give attention to good behavior, make requests effectively, teach values, create rules, enforce rules, use consequences wisely, and problem solve together. So let's talk about skill number 1, which I believe is the most important skill, Billy. Spend one-on-one time. We use
And
this
you're
skill.
a father of 6, so even for big families, that's an important one.
Oh man, absolutely. Yeah, and each child is a human being and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And when we meet these 4 emotional needs, especially with this first skill, it helps us become closer to connect with our children, to strengthen that relationship. And that's what families are all about. If we want to have a joy in raising our kids, that connection, relationship is everything.
I
So
agree.
the first skill is spending that one-on-one time. I believe this is the most important skill of all the skills. In other words, it's the foundation of the other 14 parenting skills. Practicing this skill makes the other skills work better. So let's take a look what it means to spend one-on-one time with our kids. Each parent spends uninterrupted time with each child on a regular basis, daily, if possible, doing what the child loves to do. So let me say that one more time. Each parent spends uninterrupted time with each child, daily if possible, doing something fun, what the child loves to do. Here's some things I used to do with my children. We have a trampoline in our backyard. I used to take one of my kids out and we'd take blankets and pillows and we'd lay on the trampoline and we'd watch the stars come out and we'd see satellites go over and once in a while we'd see a shooting star and that was really cool. But the best part was while we were laying on that trampoline, what do you think we were doing?
Talking.
Talking. Yeah, we were just getting to know each other. And my kids loved it. We'd play catch, we'd play games, we'd shoot hoops in the driveway, we'd take trips to the library, we'd bake something together, just the 2 of us, you see. We would build something with blocks or Legos. Of course, that's when they were small. Draw or color something. We'd go to a golf course when they got a little bit older. I have 5 girls and 1 son. We used to buy hairspray by the case. But my son loved to play golf, and so we would go to the golf course, putting greens and hit a bucket of balls or play 9 or 18 holes of golf. And it doesn't take long. I suggest that if we were to take 9 minutes a day and break that 9 minutes up into 3 sections, the first 3 minutes of the day would be face-to-face talking with our children when they wake up. The second 3 minutes of the day would be when we come home from work. We grab our child and we spend 3 minutes face-to-face time. And at nighttime, 3 minutes just before they go to bed. That's only 9 minutes a day, and that would make a noticeable difference. In my book, I list 70 ideas to get parents started. So here's something to consider. And you mentioned this already. It's never too early or too late to start building that relationship with our children. My oldest daughter is 45 years old, and I take her to lunch. We still spend one-on-one time together. I spend one-on-one time together with all my children. And
That's beautiful.
now I've got all these grandchildren I need to spend one-on-one time with.
Where
So
do you find the time?
that's the big thing, right? As a grandparent, it's a little bit easier, but parents, they have to work and they have chores and they have things that they need to do. So it's kind of tough. One of my grandchildren came to visit me. His name is Stockton, 5 years old. Stockton, let's you and me do something. What do you want to do? He says, go to the park. So off to the park we went. Swing me, Grandpa. Go on the teeter-totter with me, Grandpa. Come over to the monkey bars with me, Grandpa. He was having a great time because I was spending this one-on-one time with him. At one point, he looked up at me and he said, Grandpa, I'm the boss of you, aren't I? And I said, today you are. You see, I was also meeting his need for a sense of personal power.
Amazing. Oh, wonderful. We don't have much time, so I would
Mhm.
like to wrap up. And for parents, this book is a must read. It sounds like you have very actionable, practical steps for people to take to strengthen the relationship with their kids.
Yes,
And we also gave people great takeaways during this conversation. Just let people know where they can find the book and further connect, get more support.
sure. I have a website, 911parentingemergency.com. And anybody can go to Amazon to find my book, 911, What is Your Parenting Emergency? And just one more thing, I intentionally made this book easy to read and easy to understand. I left out the fluff, the non-essential material to make this book short and to the point. What I tried to do is eliminate any excuse a parent could have for not reading this book. I would just love it if everybody bought this book, read it, started practicing the principles. And I think that uh, anybody who's a parent would notice a significant positive change in their family. So, Billy, I just want to thank you for the opportunity you've given me today to share my message.
Thank you, Richard. This was enlightening conversation. I appreciate it.